going to throw out a lot of information, unfortunately maybe too much. I am trying to do a post every day on Facebook and on Instagram, which represents some of the views more in depth. So there's a sign-up sheet if you want to put your name and email. You don't have to do that, but there's also a handout that has the website on it. It has kind of what my proposals are, and then links to all the Facebook, the Instagram, and my webpage. So I'll give you a warning. You're not going to agree with everything I say. It's just going to happen, right? And unfortunately, there is a statistical possibility in the thermodynamics that I could be wrong on every issue. I don't think I am, but there is the possibility. And so some of you may be distressed by what I say. I have to give you that as kind of a informed consent as a doctor. I'm still got a license, so I haven't completely retired, but I'm hoping that's not going to be necessary. So a couple things about my bio, and I don't want to go through details, but I really have lived a life of service from a young lad all the way through, and I think service is kind of important in having an orientation towards service, because there's two different types of service, right? There's service to the community, and then there's self-service. And I don't really think we want somebody in the board that unfortunately has a conflict of interest. So the only reason why I'm running, I wanted to retire. I wanted to be on a farm and just do another transformation of life. But what I saw in my community and what people were saying and what our government were doing were diametrically opposed. That's the only reason why I'm doing all this. So two things that I did is I was an orthopedic surgeon and I did a lot of research. And both of those are important because knowledge is power, and we all know that. And what you do is you investigate, and that's true in orthopedics, planning a surgery, as well as designing an investigation. You then do analysis, trying to take the data you've got and come up with a conclusion, and try to problem solve. And one of the things that I was pretty good at is thinking out of the box. And I think that that's what we need. And you need to think long term. I would always think about, if my surgery failed, what's the next step? I don't know if we're doing that here in the county. I think we're just reacting to things and not trying to create a big picture. My initials are FXM, and if you see it real quick, it's fixing. All right, so I'm just going to go through a bunch of different topics. The first is decreased property tax, right? How many people would like to have a property tax decreased? Like, I don't think there's anybody who wants more property tax. And I don't know if I could actually keep that promise, but I do think when you look at it, we have had a 60% increase in our budget in 10 years. And that's all funded by your property tax. So there's a couple ways that we can recapture some lost revenue. One, all of you pay personal property tax. But if you're somebody who doesn't live in the county, you don't have to. But there are a lot of counties that do it. It's called situs. And if you have a boat, if you have a mobile home, if you have some personal property that's located here, we can actually raise revenue from that. I think we need to increase the transient occupancy tax. That's the lodging tax. Ours is lower than most of the state, and that's a huge source of revenue that we'd be tapping in. And the way it's designed, most of our current occupancy tax just goes to the tourist office. It doesn't go to our general fund. Tapping a forest sustainability fund. We have a lot of conservation land, and conservation land is good for us as citizens. It's good for the environment. It's good for the future generations, but it's not good for our community because it decreases the tax base. It guarantees that the lowest tax rate is given to those individuals. Here's a way to recoup some of that. The state has set aside funds in this forest fund that we can draw on in proportion to how much land is set aside in the county. So that's another way we can bring in resources. And then finally, I think we should take our tangible property tax for business. So all of our businesses, just like you pay personal property tax, the businesses pay tax on their assets also each year. And we should be doing that for businesses that are a lot of times stationed here but registered elsewhere. They pay taxes, especially if it's something that has a lot of franchises. They pay tax in a different state, but their assets are located here, and I think we should tap into that. It's known as paying your fair share. I'm not trying to get any more money out of anybody. I'm just trying to get people who are not paying their fair share to actually chip in. So we got to make Greene County a lot more competitive. All of these big proposals that people are coming up with for glamping, for instance, These are a lot of low-wage paying jobs that aren't going to be helping our county whatsoever. So we need to attract some business. Recently, we actually were able to steal from Orange County a Harley-Davidson dealership. So that's going to be mechanics jobs that are going to pay fairly well, and that's going to help us. But when you look at our businesses, we tax them on gross. You're not taxed on gross at a federal or state level. You're allowed deductions, and that's wrong for the businesses. So I think we should try to tax it on net. And then the question is, how are we going to pay for that? Well, there are tons of businesses that do business in our county and don't pay any tax because they, again, come from another county. We do have a provision for that. If you do more than $25,000 worth of business, they do tax you here. But the way they keep track of it is by permits. And permits are only when you first do something. So I just had a heat pump put in by Thompson & Thompson, Green County Group, over $10,000. If it was done by anybody else, it would have been zero revenue to the county. So what I think we should do, a little bit unique, is make everything practically, plumbing, electrical, roofing, siding, a permit. It's free to you, doesn't involve an inspection, but it allows us to keep track of how much business is being done, and then we tax the businesses that don't live and reside in this county, but do a lot of work here. And I think we might be able to get that balanced out. We need to invest in a county pool. It's summer, it's hot. I think all of you probably had access to a pool when you were younger, unless maybe you were here in Greene County. People drive to Elkton and Charlottesville to go to a pool. And I think that's kind of criminal. We treat our tourists better than we do our children, because both the Galidia Mountain proposal and the glamping proposal both had pools in them that our kids couldn't use. So that increase in transient occupancy tax that I talked about before, I would use for one purpose. I would use it for the pool. So when you look at it, currently we have a 5% transient occupancy tax. Only 40% goes to green, 60% goes to the tourism office. Chesterfield is 8%, Arlington is 8.25, and Seaville is 8. So if we just raise ours to 8, that's an extra $300,000 based on my calculations. Now, if you've known something about Greene County, you almost can't get an answer out of anybody if you ask the county official. You got to basically fill out a FOIA request. So some of these figures, I'm just taking it from their budget and extrapolating, but I think that's a real figure. And some people would say, well, wait, that's not fair to the tourists. Well, right now, it's $5 a day for an average stay in the county. An average stay is $95. And if you extrapolate that per year, that's $18.25. I don't think anybody in this room pays $18.25 in real estate taxes. So I don't know why you would have a tourist come in and basically subsidize their stay. So I think it's completely fair to bring it up to 8%, and that's what everybody else has. So I think that's completely fine. Additionally, I think you have a public-private partnership. I would personally go to Lowe's and say, look, you give us material at cost, we'll paint Lowe's on the bottom of the pool. If you get a contractor who'll do the earth, we can call it, Anderson Pool. I don't care. I think that's one way we can do it. I think most people would donate to this cause. And then finally, I do think that you can have a concession that would probably help for the maintenance every year. So I don't think this is going to really drag at all. I think this is a way to do it. And when you look at it, our current budget has only $328,000 for recreation for our kids. And we devote $308,000 to tourism. I think we should treat our kids a little better. I think when you look at making, I don't know why we're going backwards, sorry. Controlling government spending, I think, everybody says they're going to control government spending, but I do think we have a right to ask what people are doing with our money. And right now, our board really isn't doing that. Fiscal year 23, $86 million is our budget. 13 years ago, it was only 53. That's a 62% increase at a time when inflation was historically low. And the board's decisions that they're making are making this a bedroom community. Now, why is that a problem? They claim we can grow out of our problems by putting more and more housing units. The problem is those people work in Harrisonburg and they work in Charlottesville. They don't keep that money here, and we don't have businesses that we can tax in here. So it's really a net negative. And when you look at our median property tax in the county, it's $12.61. The education, when you take the amount of students that we have in our budget, we spend $17,247 for each student per year. So if you're going to add bedroom communities, you can just follow the chart on the increase in your property tax. So really, taxpayers don't benefit, construction companies do, real estate companies do, but you do not benefit from development in this county. I think when you look at Green, it was known as an agricultural hub, and I think it can be an agricultural hub again. With the way the weather patterns are changing, the PEC basically says that the future of agriculture will be on the East Coast in the mid-range because it's too hot out west, and you can see that going on right now. I know it's a little Jeffersonian. I went to UEA, so please forgive me to think about farms. But we are in a region that cares about food, whether it's Charlottesville or DC. People care about where their food comes from. They want to know where it comes from. They want it organic. And I do think we have the ability to generate that. One of the things I'm going to be talking to some of our farmers is the concept of a Green County Beef Consortium. We do tons of cattle farming. Almost everybody sells their calf off after 1 year, even though they could continue to graze it. This past year, when your prices were going up 35% in the grocery store in November, beef went down, calves went down to $1.80. They didn't recover until January. So I think that when you look at finished products, you're talking $26, $28 a pound for grass-fed beef, and I think you can do that with having enough farmers to be able to guarantee an online presence and to guarantee restaurants that you would have their cuts of beef year-round. And when you have enough farmers, that's what you can do. Preserve rural green. That's why I'm running. The logo I have is the clover. I didn't steal this off the 4-H. The letters are for agricultural, residential, business, and conservation. In my opinion, they should be separate and all supported by our government. So the rural heritage is why you all came here. You didn't come here for 29. And the people who stayed here, they didn't stay here because of 29. There was a proposal for a rural advisory committee. Who's going to be on that committee? They won't tell you. I think it should be either randomly taken from the people who live in the rural zones or at least the biggest producers. People who actually care about the rural areas, not people who might be involved in construction and real estate. I think we can incentivize agricultural land transfers. And what does that mean? Right now, there's a transfer tax associated when you sell real estate. Imagine if you actually decrease that, if the land would remain in agriculture. Cut it in half. And if for some reason the person who inherits the land then tries to sell it, you do clawback taxes. But I think we have to promote agriculture. We do this with businesses all the time. Promote homesteading. Right now, in the 20 and 30-year group, if you get on Instagram, there's a huge movement towards homesteading. These people are highly educated. Most of them are working remotely, and they all want farms. So how could we incentivize that? They recently passed cluster development for the residential areas. And the residential areas are often agriculture pieces that they carve up. They're not making enough money, so the planning department came up with a brilliant idea. We'll do cluster development where instead of getting 12 units per your piece of land, we'll give you 16, as long as you leave a little sliver that might be considered rural. So imagine a division where 80% of it is homes, and homes more dense than it should be, but 20% may be a field that both the developer doesn't want to take care of and the county doesn't want to take care of. So it's an eyesore. What I would say is create rural cluster development. If your 170-acre farm can only have 2 subdivision rights, make it 5, 45-acre farmettes, which is exactly what people are looking for permaculture. So I think that we need to support the agricultural lands as much as we do residence and business, because we borrow these rural lands from the future. I think we need to guarantee a cost-effective quality education. Obviously, all the major decisions are and should be made by the school board. However, you're paying for it. It's 60% of your budget. So I think you can ask questions, especially when we're promoting standards and we're trying to make citizens from those standards. You can graduate our high school now with a D+ average. Think about that. That's how much your $17,000 is getting, a D plus average, D plus. We need to ensure that citizens have a safe water source. Now this is a little busy, and I know you guys are like, is he ever going to shut up? So this is historical conditions for Greene County. We have a major drought every 30 years. The last one was in 2002. It was so bad that the Rapidan River, which ran dry, which is the source of almost all of our surface water, created a major crisis. It was so bad that the General Assembly then told every county in Virginia to come up with a plan for getting rid of drought. I read the entire 214 pages. And we're doing none of what we wrote. And the problem was, this past spring and summer, early summer, we were actually at 25% of normal flows. We were so close to a major drought, it wasn't even funny. So the proposal was supposed to be for wells and the White Reservoir. So the wells that the county dug, 6 of them were abandoned because they were basically generating less than 5 gallons per minute, which is not even good for your household. The highest was 55. So that was never going to be a source of water, and that was 20 years ago. We have built tons of wells since then, and nobody's keeping track of it. Who keeps track of it? The health department. And then the health department just gives you issues you a permit to have a well. They don't say how many wells have been dug that went dry. Wilson Wells went in, drilled one, didn't yield anything, went to another one, drilled another one, or maybe 25 years ago, you only had to get down 200 feet. I recently had a well put in, it had to go down to 700 feet. And each time you're going deeper and deeper and stealing water from somebody else's well. The White Reservoir was, again, it was supposed to be a reservoir that was built, and it was going to supply the surface water back up. It hasn't been built. 10 years ago, the estimate was $35 million. And although we have 7,900 residents, about half are on wells, so that's 3,500 residents. I know the price has gone up in the last 10 years beyond $35 million, but even at that rate, that's $10,000 per household drawing water. I just don't think it's ever going to be made, personally, unless we get an infuse of money from somewhere else. But what are we doing? Are we deciding we can't put any extra strain on the system? No, we're planning on building 1,900 new units in the next couple of years for housing. And we just voted in a luxury camping group that's going to add 750 people a day as a ghost population. That's a lot of water for a source that's very unreliable. So my governing philosophy, whether you like glamping or not, I'm sort of agnostic. I can see positive on both sides. It's the precedent that it sets. What the board did is they took a piece of land for a company that was waving enough money at them, and they switched it, they retro-zoned it, took it from residential and made it agriculture. Because they were then able to use, like a Trojan horse, the idea of tourist lodging, which most of us think as a house or a lodge, and they said, well, these 144 campsites are a tourist lodge. And things that aren't allowed in the agricultural district are subsidiaries. So they're going to have a restaurant, they're going to have a spa, they're going to have a store, which are all not permitted in the agricultural zone. But getting back to the major point, what that means is none of your zoning, none of your houses and your zone has any meaning in it. Somebody can come in and give enough money, and they will take the property next to you and do whatever they want with it. So I'm not really for that. It's a team approach. When I was an orthopedic resident, I would have residents who come in and they say, what do you think I ought to do here? And, how do I do ethical practice? And I would say, well, use a team approach. And they would go, oh, that means we're going to be able to all share and everything and do everything. I'm like, no. Team approach is when you go in and you write in a chart that you did a physical examination, you don't copy my note, which is what they all did, to use as the note for admission. You don't say that you listened to somebody's lungs when they didn't. If you look at the notes that you have on your doctors who are all typing on their computers, if you go back, they did a big exam on you that never happened. And that's unethical. And what I said was, treat everyone as your mother. And unless she abandoned you, you know what ethical practice is. If you would want your mother to go in the operating room without her lungs ever being listened to, then I think you're a crappy doctor and you're a crappy son. But that's the approach. So I think it's the golden rule. I would never vote for something that would be next to your house that I wouldn't want next to my house. So, it is the obligation of your government to represent your views and all the views of the citizens of this county equally. And more important, to represent your views in your county over those of people outside the county. And this is a long history. About every 30 years we come up with this problem. So this is Jefferson, my man. Governments are instituted among men deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. Right? That's basically our Declaration of Independence. We the people comes through our Constitution. Basically, we are the government. Lincoln, second inaugural address, that the government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from this earth. Roosevelt, let us never forget that government is ourselves, not an alien power over us. The ultimate rulers of our democracy are not a president, and a senator, and congressmen, and government officials, but the voters of this country. Ronald Reagan, much more succinct. We are the people. Tell the government what to do. It doesn't tell us. So I intend to make sure that the government in this county understands this relationship. So thank you very much for your attention. I do have a sign-up sheet and the stuff off to the side. And I know you guys don't endorse non-Democrats. I've been independent all my life. It dates from the time that I was in the Navy. When you were in the Navy, you were neutral, and I just think that that's a great policy. But, to let you know, I dated Al Gore's press secretary. And I was between here and the door when Barack Obama gave his keynote speech in 2004. And I don't think I was the first person, but I was pretty damn close to basically text Laura and say, this is the next president of the United States. Who's the Democrat? All right. Thank you very much. Do you have any questions? Yeah. So this is Violet. That's the latest edition. She's 6 months old, and this is Killian, who's basically what I call the furry fourth. I have 3 children. He's my furry fourth.
We have time for questions and answers.
Okay. I have 2 questions. I think it was on your second slide, you referenced the forest fund.
Yes.
Who pays into that?
Basically, it's donated in part to forest interests, I guess logging groups and things like that, and the state maintains that fund.
So,
And
that
you
each
apply,
have-
yes, you apply it each year, and there's only 2 caveats, but one of them works to our benefit. One is, it has to be used for outdoor recreation, schools, outdoor recreation, and/or education about forests.
My second question is, you talked about your, recently having a contractor, and you're talking about taxing any sum of outside contract work.
Not any, I think at some point in time, you have to make a determination,
So, my
right?
question to
Yeah.
if it's work that doesn't require a permit, how would that be
You
enforced?
just basically say for you to redo your roof, you need a permit. But
Oh,
it'll be a free permit, and there won't be an inspection associated with it, because that's the status you have right now.
So it would be in.
It's a financial tracking
Has to
system.
know that,
Yeah.
that is real.
Yeah. I think if you get it out there, contractors will, and it levels the playing field for our people, right? Because they're basically able to go underneath, because our people are paying that tax anyway. And when you look at Madison, Madison has 0 business tax. 0 business tax. So they're some people might think that's good. Yeah.
They have a couple of people producing things that we don't have in place.
Yeah. I mean, it's strange when you drive through Madison how different it is to our community. And there's good things and there's bad things for both.
Where did the figure of $17,000 per student come from?
That came from a combination of off the internet. But it was a citing by, actually what I did is I took the number of children of school age in the county, which is 2953, and then I took our $58 million that we spend and divided it. That's how I did it. Now, again, one of those things, the budget number isn't wrong, but, you know, the number of students, actually, believe it or not, might be lower, because what the school system is saying, there's sort of a diaspora of some of the students not coming back.
But that,
The school would say something like.
That would just make it more expensive.
that total amount includes state funding and federal funding. There's no way that local is 17,000.
No, but that's the cost of the education.
But
Yeah.
it's not all coming from green, it's coming from when I pay my state taxes and when I pay my federal taxes.
But when you look at it, but what you also have to keep in mind is the differential between the average real estate tax here, which is 1,200, and 50%, even if that number is 50%, that's still a huge delta that you have to, that everybody else has to
No,
make
the whole
up.
bedroom
Yeah.
community is absolutely, you're absolutely right. It uses far more services, police, fire, rescue, education. Then it never, you never get that.
And then there's even a problem, and nobody gives you really a straight answer. 2 million of that 53 I asked is COVID funding. And last year, the COVID funding was $1.5 million when we actually had COVID. This year, it's 2. And the problem I have with it is that's federal funds. And are they creating mandates that when the federal funds dry up, we have to make up? Like, these are the kind of things that I think people need to be asking, like, where is that money going? That's a lot of money. You know, what is it doing? What is it obligating us to do? I've been told, which would be great, that it's to make up the educational difference associated with in-home learning, but at a D+ average, sounds like the bar is pretty low.
But the state regulations will hamstring a whole lot of policy decisions.
Sure, absolutely.
So the better we can fund our teachers and recruit, because that's over and over again, you see, you want a good school system, you get the best teachers, and then you can blow with it.
Well, and that's why I think you want to make Green a place that people want to come. And I think what we're doing is we're making it a place that nobody would want to come. And it kicks out one of the legs of the concept of how we're funding our county, right? The tourism dollar. So what happens when, you know, you have the vistas that you're up on Lydia Mountain or around the area are no longer pastoral, they're subdivisions. People are going to go, wait, you know, I could go to Arlington and go to an Airbnb. Why would I go and watch somebody else's subdivision? So there's a lot of feedback loops here that I can't figure out what the plan is. And that's why I think we do need to look at strategically, where do you want to be 50 years from now and build towards that, rather than just saying build, it's all good, because, you know, development is all progress, and I don't think that's really true. Or it's not progress forward.
You know what percentage of students we had that graduated, actually graduated with D+?
No, sir. And I don't think you'd be able to find out. Based on my trying to get information out of our county, it's very, very difficult, I think, to get a real number. And the problem is, and I've seen this with other school systems, you know, when you have a graduation rate, they take the seniors. They don't take the people when they started, how many freshmen, and so it's all false.
They don't think about it.
It's a shell game, yeah.
Thank you, Fritz. Very interesting. I have a lot of issues with a lot of what you
Sure,
said,
of
and
course.
we'll continue our discussion. You had said at one point that the transient occupancy tax, we don't benefit at all. We do. Free cents, 60% goes to the county, the rest goes to the
I think I was being a little bit.
You weren't here, but we spent close to $50 million on school infrastructure. That was a major need. That's probably the money that you saw here that was going into education. You will find as you get into government, should you win, Greene County is way behind on infrastructure. And it's, game of catch-up. And so you'll be balancing all kinds of things. And you're gonna need to spend a lot more than you think you're gonna need to spend. Water, you had said you didn't think we'd ever see a reservoir. You need to start working on how you're gonna pay for a reservoir. Because we need 900 million gallons of water sitting in a lake over there. Or we're all gonna start drinking Heineken beer.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, and what I don't understand is how a government can kick the can down the road 20 years. I mean, it's just, it's mind-boggling, and make the problem worse by shoving more and more development and adding more things, just put greater demands on the water.
But this is where your absence from the county is showing. The government has been trying for 20 years to build that reservoir. First, a citizens group knocked it down, a noisy minority, and then the regional water authority knocked it down. No one's been kicking the can down the road. Maybe you can put the can on the shelf and build that reservoir, because it's gonna need to be built. Finally, one more question.
Sure.
You've never mentioned the town of Standardsville and a vision for the town of Standardsville. It's near and dear to my heart. It's our county seat. It's our administrative center, our judicial center, our education center, our historical base. In my mind, it's very important. So,
I completely agree, and the question is, like, what is your vision? When you, I don't want to do the comparison, but when you drive down Madison, it's beautiful. It's preserved historic homes. And I think to a certain extent, they're not making the most out of it they can. I would look at Standardsville, you gotta try to get people to come off the road to visit us. And I do think personally, what's different for us is the agriculture. And I would try to make this a food destination. I'm not talking about Mexican restaurants, I'm talking about people in agriculture making goat cheese, people making sausages, people making, and I know people like laugh, but I think you need to go on and see how much that can generate, and it supports the whole concept of a rural community, it supports the tourism, it's a unifying concept. But I don't think you can do that in a day, but I do think that 600 housing units, visibly from the road, probably isn't a great thing for the future of Standards.
I think we need rooftops, or this town will go with it. Why did the town die? Because they built the bypass. Now you need rooftops. I love the Mexican restaurant or the Salvadoran restaurant. It's the best we can get right now. We can do better, we need more, but I like those rooftops. And I like that they're by right development. No one is rezoning anything. That's by right.
The only thing with the rooftop development, let's put it as example. I mean, I understand that you have a concept. We have already put.
No, it's the law.
We have put 25% more population in this county in the last 15 years. And Standardsville isn't any different.
Washington DC's there and Charlottesville's there. That's what
Right, but that's fine, but guess what? You know where the jobs are? They're there. That's where people are making their money. Now, if you could create business here, I wouldn't disagree with you.
I'm with you,
But
you're gonna need water. No one else. But you gotta have water.
Then why would you build more homes? Like, I don't know, that's where I get the disconnect.
No one can stop those homes from being built.
Sure you can.
They're by right. Yes, property rights, read your law. Yeah, it's all ready to go. It's shovel ready, and Francis needs to help us tap into the infrastructure act. Pardon? That's the easy part. It's all ready to go.
I think
A
it's,
lot of people in your former organization that didn't want it and don't want it.
No, they all want it. It's the citizens that don't want it.
I just think we gotta get there, and I just think it's a little dangerous what we're doing right now. Until it's built, what we're doing is extremely dangerous for everyone. Because the water in 2002 was turned off to orange.
You sure you want sleepless nights? Because I had 10 years of sleepless nights. And when you talk about teams, you're one in a team. And not everyone's going to agree with you, Francis.
No,
So get ready.
I think I said that at the very beginning, and I think the thing, what you have to do is, you can't go red, you can't go blue, You can't go, when was your name here in the county?
That's right.
You gotta listen to what people say, and you gotta go, I agree with that, maybe I agree 80%, maybe I agree 70%. And maybe that's why you should vote instead of like our old, if you'll see my post from today, there was a logo that I made up, One Nation Indivisible. And if you look at it really closely, it's blue and red, and it's based on the percentage of voters and then the middle. And it really represents where we are as a country, in that the few people in the middle who seem to consider what comes out of people's mouths determine the future of the country. And I do think the same thing can be done here, but it's going to take sitting down with a bunch of people and saying, I don't think we can, when the independent impact study for glamping goes through, water has to be a discussion. It has to be a discussion. And it wasn't. We tried to bring it up, but they were like, they didn't want to hear it. And I think that's ridiculous. Because what are you going to do? You're going to turn the taps off for the glamping to make sure that people who actually live here have water?
You're gonna need to build a reservoir.
I agree. But their plan, right, is to do wells, but if the wells don't work, tap them.
And you're against Glenn.
No, I'm not. I'm against the principle of glamping, 100%.
Why?
Because I don't really want 5 people in a commission, planning commission, and 5 people on the board determining what goes in next to me in spite of zoning laws that are supposed to protect me. And that's the problem. They took residential land and changed it back into agriculture. Could you do that? Could you walk in tomorrow to the board and say, I want my land listed as agriculture so I can save a boatload of tax money? Of course you can. Maybe if you had $35 million, you could. And I don't believe in that concept. I believe we're all equal under the law. And our Constitution is our zoning and the comprehensive plan and our charter. And we should be sticking to it. That's my opinion. Paul?
We're going to disagree on this, shouldn't we?
No, that's not how this country works.
Hey,
And it's getting worse by the minute.
that doesn't mean I have to believe that. Just because everybody else is doing something wrong doesn't mean I'm.
It's worse by the minute.
What I'm trying to say is that we don't have any money source coming in. We don't have business. And everyone keeps fighting when someone wants to open a B&B in their home, and it's like, oh my God, we can't do that.
I don't think anybody's fighting that. In fact, I think by putting in glamping, you're destroying the mom and pop thing that was designed for. It wasn't designed for a company, an investment company from New York. If they would have wanted to do it, they would have tried to go to the Adirondacks and they would have laughed them out of the state. But they're competing with all these Airbnbs now. And we're wiping them out. And what are they giving us in return? Do you think the executive chef for that restaurant is going to come from Greene County? Do you think their accountants are going to? Do you think their lawyers are going to come from? No, what they're going to do is they're going to give us a bunch of service jobs. They're going to offer people changing beds and slinging hash. And I think that our county needs to be thinking that. Just now.
That issue about where people are coming from, what are they going to offer us in terms of citizens and students? The number one area, according to BLS, is hospitality. And hospitality really doesn't exist in this county, to my knowledge. And I see that glamping, one, sort of maintains the theme of things being rural, but I also see it as a potential for giving students the experience, but we also have to work to install programs, educational programs, specifically hospitality, that would allow our students not only to be able to learn about it, but also practice it, and maybe be able to have a career in it. So I think there's a value. I understand what you said, that you're agnostic about it, but I think there's some value to your point about water. I think it's a valid one. Where does it come from? And certainly, we're on wells, and one of the things lately that I've been thinking about is, I wonder how deep our well is. And we're at the bottom of a mountain, so my position, and I have no idea whether I'm right on this or not, is that a any water coming from the mountain will be coming in our backyard, so our well will be okay. I don't know if that's accurate, but I think you raise an important point, which is what are we gonna do about water? And I don't see putting in a reservoir, and it's gonna take money. I know the issue about bonds was raised, I don't know where that stands, but it's a valid point. We can't just keep on growing without an infrastructure that can support it. So I'm done, that's my opinion.
Those wells that I was talking about that the county put in, they were down to 700 feet. And less than a half of them produced anything more than 45 gallons per minute. And the most was like 55. So the problem is, I think a lot of people think that you can rely on a well, and the problem, nobody knows that. Like, the health department doesn't know that. If you hired a hydrologist, they might be able to give you a better estimate, but all of this is guessing. And I just think that you need to look at the experience of people building wells, and I think you need to look at your water resource now, not what you hope it should be.
I agree with you, Troy.
Yeah.
And the health department's been responsible for those wells, both whether they are governmental